Hey, let me say again, welcome to each and every one of you for making the choice to come join us here at Abundant Life. I pray that your time today will be a time where you meet with God, because that's what we're all about. We love you, we love people, when we love God, and we love life. And I know when you connect with God and with God's people, it can be very rewarding, and that's what we pray will be your experience here today. I'm starting a new series that I've entitled Embrace the Mission. Let me be honest about something. I had envisioned it being a different title, but with current events and things that are going on that are in the news, I thought, I don't want that title on the website. I was going to call it The Contagious Church. So, I thought, that ain't good, So anyway, I'm entitling this series, Embrace the Mission. I want to start off with a story, first of all, though. The story goes that there's this antique dealer, and, he's always got his eye open to see something that, might be a collectible that people don't realize what it is. And he happened to be walking through an old downtown area, and as he was walking down this old downtown area, and these were storefronts, that were there, and he saw this storefront, and there was this doorway, and in the doorway, there was this mangy-looking cat that was lapping milk out of a dish. Well, the dish caught his eye, and he realized that it was an antique, and it shouldn't be just used as a dish for a cat. And so he decided that, he would go into the store. And he said to the store owner, he said, I want to buy your cat. I'd like to buy your cat for $2. The store owner said, no, the cat's not for sale. I'm sorry. Oh, the antique dealer said, well, how about if I give you $20 for the cat? The store owner goes, sold, you can have the cat. And so the store owner picked the cat up and handed it to the guy, and as the antique dealer was headed to go out of the store, he turned around and said, hey, that cat is really used to that dish. For $20, could you just throw in the dish as well? The store owner said, no, I can't do that. That's my lucky saucer. I've sold 68 cats this week. Ask you a question. What's valuable to you? I want us today to think about what is valuable and what holds a great priority in our lives. Now, I submit to you, we're going to look at this series, Embracing Our Mission. I submit to you, if we want to know what ought to be important to us, we should see what's important to God. And so we're going to look at Luke chapter 15. Now, for the sake of time, we can't read through all 32 verses and then me to preach. So we're going to just take and look at several different places. And I want to encourage you that before the day's over, or even by tomorrow at least, that you would go to Luke chapter 15 and read the chapter in its entirety, to read it through in its context. Would you pray with me? Father, I thank you this morning for the Spirit of God that obviously is resting in this place. To worship this morning, oh God. Lord, you're moving. You are the way maker, miracle worker. You're moving in our lives and in our hearts, oh God, and you're moving in this house. I thank you, oh God, for what you're doing in the corporate worship and the corporate teaching and preaching of your word. I pray right now, Lord, that unction of the Spirit that I sense in me, oh God, would be spirit and life, and that at the same time, that anointing would not only be upon me, but it be upon our ears to hear from you today. In Jesus' name, and everyone who agreed with that said. So first of all, I want you to see that we need to know that people matter to God and people are a priority to God, because the parable of lost sheep tells us that. Look at Luke 15. Let's just look at verses 4 and verse 7. This is familiar to you, but read it. Follow after me with it if you would, please. Don't read it out loud, but see it with your eyes and read it to yourself. Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Does he not leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? I tell you, verse 7, in the same way, there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who do not need to repent. So here's what we see here. First of all, we see that lost sheep are important to God, and this parable ought to tell us that to God, every lost sheep or person, because that's what he's talking about, is important. Every person is important. Every person is important. Would you turn to your neighbor and say, hey, you are important to God? I don't say that flippantly. You are important to God. And so we see in this text that there's 99, one of them is lost. And the reason why he's telling this parable, and let's not forget, we didn't read the first verse in the chapter. Jesus is being accused by the Pharisees, the religious leaders of his day. He is being accused of eating and spending time with sinners. So Jesus tells these three stories because he knows the heart of the Pharisees and what's going on in their mind. And he says, I want you to think about this for a moment. You see, the Pharisees didn't understand Jesus' mission nor his method, and he wanted them to understand what is important to God. So, how do we put this in context today? And thinking about that, think about it this way. Any of you ever been in a house that was on fire? Anybody here, you were in a house and it caught on fire? There's a few people here and there. You certainly will identify with this more than likely. Let's suppose that you live in a 2-story house, and let's suppose you are asleep and you're a mother or a father and you've got maybe 4 different children, and you're asleep, and all of a sudden you wake up in the middle of the night, you smell smoke, and you even hear the crackling of timbers. And so panicked, you race to your children's bedroom and you begin to rouse them, and you get them down the stairs and out the front door, and you deposit your sleepy children out onto the lawn and a safe distance away. And gasping for air, you begin to squint and count the kids through the smoke, and you say, Tim and Sally and Angel and Jojo, where's Lily? Where's Lily? And at that point, what do? Do you say, I got 4 of them out of the house? No. This father, what he's going to do, what you are going to do, is now Lily is the priority. Lily is the one that the priority focuses on, because the other children are safe. And at all cost, they're probably, if the fire department has gotten there, they may have to hold you back, because regardless of the cost, you want to go in to save Lily. You see, every person is important to God, and that's what Jesus is trying to tell us and the Pharisees, that every single person is important. And this leads right to the next point of this, and that is that every lost person is a priority. Doesn't he leave the 99 out in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? Now, I don't know about you, but sometimes we might read that and we put it in the context and we go, wait, what a minute. Wait a minute. Jesus leaves, what about the 90 and 9? What about me? Is Jesus walking away from me? Well, hold on a minute. Realize that this is a parable. And you know what parables are? They're stories that are used by Jesus to emphasize a main point. So his main point is that every lost person is important, and every lost person is a priority. Understand this, God has already demonstrated his love for us, and his will is for all of us to be rescued. The main point here is the priority of the lost. But back to the 90 and 9. If you are counted in the 90 and 9, the Bible makes this clear. He will never leave you or forsake you. I really like Hebrews chapter 13, verse 5 from the Amplified Version. You may try the Amplified Version from time to time, but it says this in the Amplified Version. For he, God, himself has said, I will not in any way fail you or give you up or leave you without support. I will not in any degree leave you helpless or forsake you or let you down, or I will not relax my hold on you, assuredly not. Whoo, I don't know, somebody needs to shout over that this morning. Yeah, I want you to, I know I asked you to do this a moment ago, but I want you to look at your neighbor and say, if you are one of the 99, he will never leave you. If you are one of the 99, he will never leave you. That's not the main point that's being there. The point is Jesus' priority in trying to reach the lost. Secondly, we can grasp that people matter to God and people are a priority to God because of the parable of the lost coin. Look at Luke 15, verse 8. Or suppose a woman has 10 coins, loses one, does she not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? Here's the point I want you to understand, is God treasures every person. They're important, they're a priority, but he treasures every person. This reminded me of reading the story about treasuring one single individual. It reminded me of a book that Elka gave me, and I can't remember if it was for my birthday or for Christmas. It was called Return to Honor, I believe. Yeah, Return with Honor. And it was the story of Scott O'Grady. Anybody ever read the story of Scott O'Grady? Let me see your hand. You may remember it as I tell the story. You may have read it long ago. The setting is 1995. The book was copyrighted in December of 1995. The events happened, I believe, in June of 1995. Scott O'Grady was a pilot with I believe, the U.S. Navy, and he was flying an F-16 over Bosnia during the enforced no-fly zone and the conflict that was in Bosnia in 1995. And as he was flying over, all of a sudden, a missile tore into his plane and caught it on fire. Well, he immediately ejected from the cockpit of this fighter jet. And the ejection seat shot him out, and his parachute took over, and he landed behind enemy lines in a woods, in a forest. Well, the enemy began to search for him and look for him. And for 6 days, Scott O'Grady was hiding from the enemy. It's a fascinating story. I mean, you can read of him, how he camouflaged himself, buried himself in leaves, and was peeking out and saw the enemy just steps right in front of where he was at. And for 6 days, he's surviving. He's eating ants and earthworms. And how many of you are ready to go to lunch now? He's surviving, just barely getting by. The water he can get off of, all of those things. Well, back home in the United States, the government officials are weighing the cost of sending a rescue team to locate the pilot. How many lives would be risked to save one man? How much would it cost in fuel and potential loss of further equipment? This mission would certainly be incredibly dangerous. Yet, despite all of these considerations, it was concluded that the value of saving one life outweighed any potential cost. For days, Scott O'Grady would turn on a low radio signal and then shut it off so that the enemy couldn't find him, so that his government might be able to find where he was at. The rescue mission was mounted, and in a gutsy decision, it turned out to be a successful one. Tracing O'Grady's signals as a guide, the rescue team flew into his general location, and in Navy SEAL style, in 2 minutes, they had rescued him, and he was on his way back to an aircraft carrier. Here's the point. The point of all of this is that just like they treasured the life of this pilot, so much more, God treasures every person on the planet. Every life is precious to him. That's why I personally believe, and I know many of you feel this way too, that abortion is a great atrocity in killing a child. God treasures every life. So not only does the parable, though, teach us that God treasures every life, just like this woman treasured one of her lost coins, but you see in this that God is like this woman. He is diligently seeking every person, diligently seeking after the lost. No, make no mistake, there's different characters in each one of these, but Jesus is pointing to, this is the Father's heart. It says here, does she not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? How many of you remember the last time you were so frustrated that you couldn't find something you lost? Let me see your hand. How many of you lost something this past week? Let me see your hand. I got to tell you my story. So Fridays, I've been trying a new thing. Instead of driving all the way up to the summit, it's 12 miles, you know. But since it's theoretically my day off on Friday, I'm thinking, okay, they have this community exercise center in my neighborhood that's free. I'll just go there, and it won't be so far to drive and the whole thing. And so this past Friday, I got in my car, and I believe it was like 8 o'clock in the morning, and I went over to the community center, you know, and I get over there, I parked the SUV, and I get out of it, and I go into the center, and I have my exercise clothes on underneath my coat and underneath my jeans and all of that, and so I go to the locker, and I put all of that in the locker, and so then when I turn around and sit down to put my shoes back on the bench, I look, and all the machines are busy. And being the incredibly patient person I am, I leave. I said, forget this, you know, I'm not going to sit around. So I think, okay, it's a short distance to the car, and it's cold outside this morning, but I can just go to my car real quick and get in my car, and I won't have the wind, and it'll be warm enough. And so I just grab my jeans, and I grab my coat, and I grab all my stuff, and I head out to the car, and when I get to the car, I reach out to the handle, and it doesn't beep. What is this, I say? And so I use my other hand, and it doesn't beep. And so I'm holding all of this stuff in my hands, and I also have a Kindle Fire in my hands too, because if I'm going to be on an exercise machine for about an hour, I want to watch something or see something or something like that, you know? And so that's in my hands. And so I've gotten this in my hands, and I'm reaching in these clothes in my hands into the pocket, trying to find the key fob to this, and I can't find it. And remember, it's cold outside, and now I'm going, oh, it's cold out here. I am freezing. And so I decide I'm going to get dressed beside my car as I'm standing there, because maybe I can look in my pockets and find this fob easier. So I take my shoes off, and on the cold concrete, they're there, and I pull my jeans up over my exercise shorts, and I put my coat on and all that, and I'm going back through every one of the pockets again, thinking, I must have missed the fob. It's there someplace. I reach out to the door, and it doesn't open. So I decide, I'm going back in to check, and this is my second time to go back in to check. And I check the locker again, and there's nothing there. So the third time I go back into the gym to check, and now everybody in the place is looking at this guy saying, what is wrong with that guy? Has he lost his mind? And I think, I gotta find that fob. And so my search is now more diligent than ever. I look in the locker where I've looked before. I look, And finally, when I get down on my hands and knees and look underneath a bench, there's where the fob is located. And you better believe that I rejoiced because I found it. Here's the point. Like the woman, I was not going to give up until I found it. And God is communicating to us that people matter to him so much, the lost matter to him so much, that he is diligent in his pursuit of them. Now understand, we don't see that as time. We've sang that chorus, even when I don't see it, you're working. That's even true of the lost. That God is working when we don't see. Some of you are praying. These prayer cards tell me you're praying for family members that don't know Jesus. Don't get discouraged. God is diligently seeking your loved one. He is working even when you don't see that he is working. Thirdly, I want you to see, lastly, that we can know that people matter to God and people are a priority to God because of the parable of the lost son. A little bit more text here, but follow along with me up here on the screen. Read along silently as I read it out loud. Verse 13 says, "Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had and set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything," verse 14, "there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need." Verse 15, now this is a big deal because this is a Jewish boy, and to be living with pigs or eating with pigs is just the bottom of the rung. Verse 15, "So he went and he hired himself out to a citizen of the country who set him in the fields to feed pigs." So we're skipping over some other text there, but he finally comes to himself, and in verse 20 it says, he realizes that this is not living, this is not life. And so, verse 20, "So he got up and went to his father." Now look at the next verse. It says, "While he was still a long way off." While he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him and ran to his son, threw his arms around him and kissed him. But the father said to his servants, I'm at verse 22 now, "Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fatted calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate." I've already pointed to this, but I want you to notice that God, the Father, because the Father in this story is God, saw him while he was still a long way off. Let me remind you that those of you who are praying for sons and daughters and mothers and fathers and uncles and aunts and children, God sees them still a long way off. He hasn't forgotten about them. He sees where they're at. He's been watching. This text means that the Father has been watching. He's on lookout, so to speak. And Jesus portrays the Father as watching for this lost boy, perhaps even daily searching the distant road, the horizon, hoping for his appearance. The Father notices that every day he's looking, he's watching for this lost son or daughter. See, I have no difficulty in believing that God is aware of each person that is lost, and he knows the pig pen that they have found themselves in. He knows where they are, and he has compassion for their lost and broken state. And we often think, well, why doesn't he do something? Well, God is doing something. He is working, he's moving, but it's a process that he is allowing to work until the person comes to a place. Though he knows their state, knows their lostness, even while they're still a long way off, they matter to him. Why? People matter to God. And I believe that even when they're still a long way off, he knows what they're going to be in him when they come to him. He knows what their deliverance will be like. He knows the new creature that they will be when they are found in him. Finally, notice that once the lost returns, God demonstrates that people matter because of the value he places on the rejoicing and the joy. Now, this is found in each one of these stories. It is found with each one. In verse 23, it says, kill a fatted calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. It's true, when the lost sheep was found, there was a party. It's true, when the woman found the lost coin, there was a party. And it's true with the son. We see it here. You see, celebration is the result in each of the three parables where God is trying to tell us how much he values each person and how diligent he is seeking the lost. Would you say it with me? People matter to God. Say it. People matter to God. Say it one more time. People matter to God. In closing, I want to remind you that Jesus, speaking of his own mission and the value of people, said, "For the Son of Man came to seek and to save what was lost." Luke 19:10. A simplified translation of that might be, the Son of Man came to find lost people and save them. There's someone here, you're here this morning, God spoke to my heart. You're away from God today. I don't know if you've been away from him a long time or it's been just recently. God's been watching for you. He knows where you're at. Still, while you were a long way off, he was watching for you. And today, at this moment, it's no accident that you've come to this place. Because, like in the story of the prodigal, I believe he's standing up right now saying, are they going to respond? If they do, I'm going to run to them. If you come to him today, I promise you he will run to you. Would you bow your heads and close your eyes with me for a moment? Father, I thank you this morning for the moving and the working of the Lord. You'd say, preacher, I'm not following God. I'm away from him, and so glad that the Spirit of God has spoken to my heart today. I want to come back to him. I want to give my life to him anew and afresh. I'm coming home today. Just put your hand up right where you're seated. I don't want you to stand up, look around, anything like that. Just put your hand up right where you are, and I want to pray for you this morning. Put it up and put it down. Yes, see that hand? Else, put it up, put it down. See that hand? Put